And to break down this latest jobs report for us, we're happy to have on the Chief Financial Analyst of Bankrate. Greg McBride, Chief Financial Analyst at Bankrate. Great to have you on the show.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right, Greg, first let's talk about your take on the latest jobs report that just came out today. Is this good news or bad news for our economy?
I think it's very definitely good news. We continue to see consistent job growth, and even though we do expect a slower pace of that, we just haven't seen much of a downshift yet. So a lot of consistency and job growth widespread across a variety of different sectors. It's not all just recovery from jobs lost early in the pandemic. There is job growth taking place. Professional and business services, for example, a category that there's actually 800,000 more jobs now than there were pre-pandemic. So, we're seeing a good mix of growth and recovery, and we're kind of working our way back to those pre-pandemic levels on a lot of fronts.
Now, Greg, the administration is warning the American people that they could expect to see less job growth over the next couple of months. And the administration is saying that this is a good sign because it means the economy is slowing down, and that's a good thing right now to fight to slow inflation. How do you view this message, and is it a solid one?
Well, from an economic perspective, we are going to see slower pace of job growth. The cost of money is going up, and there's not going to be as much money sloshing around the economy because of tighter policy. And the idea of that is to slow the economy and reduce demand and bring inflation down. Now, part and parcel to that is we will see a slower pace of job growth. We only need about 150,000 jobs per month to keep up with population growth. So when we've been running at 300,000 and 400,000 month in, month out, it's definitely soaking up all the slack. And we're at the point now where we have 2 open jobs for every unemployed individual. So that's a gap that even the Federal Reserve themselves has kind of pointed to as a gap they want to close.
Mm. Do you think Americans should feel confident about the economy right now? We know the Federal Reserve is in a tight position to cool off inflation without tipping us into a recession. How do you think things are going, and how likely do you think a recession is at this point?
Well, the recession talk is more around 2023 or maybe even beyond. It's not 2022. There are some solid underpinnings of the economy right now, and most notably what we're seeing in the labor market. Labor market does tend to be more of a lagging indicator. So we will see the economy slow. We will see slower job growth. But 2022 is still going to be a year where we see the economy growing, we're seeing more people working. The risks of recession really start to go up next year because that's when the cumulative effect of tighter monetary policy is really going to start to take hold.
Now, Greg, some of the economists I've spoken with about the job market here, they've told me that the labor force participation rate has kind of been lagging. What have we seen in this most recent report? Is that still the case?
Yeah, it's still lagging. It inched up a little bit, but we're still about a full percentage point shy of where we had been pre-pandemic. Still almost 1 million workers that are on the sidelines now that had been in the workforce prior to the pandemic. And so for varied reasons, whether it's early retirement, caring for relatives, or just not wanting to be exposed to the virus, a lot of people moved to the sidelines early in the pandemic and just haven't come back despite volatile financial markets and a very robust labor market.
How long do you think it will be before we see pre-pandemic level labor participation rate?
That's a good question. I'm not sure we'll get back to that exact level, simply because we will see a slower pace of job growth. The economy, the pace of growth in the economy will cool. And as I said, next year, I think that's where the risks of recession go up. And so at that point, we're not going to see that gap closing anymore. I just think that it adds a little bit more urgency to seeing that gap close this year, simply because as the risks of recession go up, we're unlikely to see further progress on that front.
Now, I want to end on something, just your personal thoughts being in the financial world. Biden made some bold comments. He just said that the U.S. is well positioned to overcome inflation and that our economy could grow faster than China's this year. And that hasn't happened since about 1976. What are your comments on this? Well,
that's more of an indictment on China's economy than it is necessarily a feather in our cap. U.S. economic growth is expected to slow this year. We've seen a very rapid snapback from the pandemic. China, on the other hand, they're still grappling with that, and that they've been shutting down large sections of their economy. And so that disparity between U.S. economic growth and Chinese economic growth really kind of stems from that. But we do have a strong labor market. Consumer finances came into this year of more volatile markets and higher inflation better positioned than had been the case just a couple of years ago, having more savings, having less debt. But we're already starting to see those reverse. So inflation is very definitely taking a toll on the finances of American households, particularly lower and middle income Americans.
All right, is there any other message you want to leave our audience with today?
I think that covers it.
Okay, thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Today, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation opened their 1989 Tiananmen Square exhibit for the anniversary of the massacre. Artifacts include students' tents, letters from jailed democracy activists, and a painting of the youngest victim, only 9 years old. A spokesperson told us that most Americans don't know that the Chinese communist regime crushed student protesters in 1989 for demanding human rights and basic freedoms.
The disproportionate and unbelievable and violent response that they were met with from the Chinese government, which was that thousands of tanks came out onto the streets of Tiananmen and crushed these students in their demands that they were making for freedom.
She says that many Americans, millennials in particular, do not understand communism. In a poll conducted by her organization, about 1/3 preferred to live in a socialist system. About half did not know that Mao Zedong was responsible for tens of millions of deaths through famine. The Tiananmen massacre is a censored topic in China. Mothers of Tiananmen collected photos of about 200 students who were killed, but the real number of deaths is believed to be in the thousands.
I think an important message is that people can't take freedom for granted, and to know about the brave struggle of those who have fought for it.
The Victims of Communism Museum memorializes over 100 million people murdered by communist regimes. The foundation is opening a museum in Washington, D.C. later this month on June 13th. And that's all we have for you tonight on the Capitol Report this evening. You can visit us at ntd.com to stay up to date on all of the latest news. From Washington, D.C., I'm Alina Weiskup. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.